Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mariner's Spirit. I'm Greg, I'm your host, and we have another great show tonight for you. But before we start the show, I'm going to mention the people I support. Number one, Plotographs with Tim Miley. Plotographs was created by Tim when he lost his pup and didn't know how he was going to be able to handle it, and ended up going ahead and coming up with a picture that he had of the puppy and him and the puppy, and he took it to a Paracon and started to sell pictures of him and his pup for charity, for shelter, animal shelters, etc. And that's how he started it out. And today he has his own events. He has the best speakers around. He does an awesome job. He is an amazing man, and now he's married. And once again, congratulations to him on getting married. And that's the first one. The second one is PKC, Paranormal Kicks Cancer. And that's Chris Gaskowski and Alex Wilkinson from down in Florida. And they do benefits for cancer research where they do haunted houses, they'll do events, and they'll just go ahead and all the money they make from that goes back into cancer research. Number three is the Jessica Petrie Foundation, and that is the daughter of Howard Petrie from Paranormal United Network. And it's a resource for expecting mothers and families of pregnant women with mental illness. And then from that point, for those three people that I support, I go into the author list of the authors that I recommend, and it's all authors that are from the community. And it's Bruce Halliday, Tobias Wayland, Adam Benedict, Kathy Kressel, Sherilyn Carter, Dr. Heatherly Langdon, Ron Iacovetti, Tony Rathman, Nathaniel Gillis, Natalie Jones, Patty Negri, Sylvia Schultz, Amelia Carter, Rex Nielsen, and David Sloan, who is the author of the book on Robert the Doll. And that's about it. So I'm really excited about having this gentleman here tonight. He's been around in my life for quite a few years, and I hope you enjoy the show tonight. And here he is. This is Len Dorman. Oh, he's got this animal sticking in front of his face.
This is my executive producer, Eartha Cat.
Well, I can. That's pretty cool. Is she hireable?
Yeah, but she's she's no skin and all bones. Now, if you remember, you were younger in your 60s, like I was. If you remember the old Batman TV series, they had a woman who played Catwoman. Actually, I had two very sexy women. One of them was Eartha Kitt. The other one was Ursula Andress, I believe.
Yes.
And the cat skeleton that I got is called Eartha Cat in memory of Eartha Kitt, who also sang Santa Baby in that very sexy voice that's so popular at Christmas.
Right. That's really wild.
Just a little bit of history. You know me, I have a lot of trivia running around in my head. It's a scary thing. My wife doesn't even like to get into my head. She says it's a very scary place.
Well, this afternoon, after I was working on some of this for the show tonight, I stumbled across on Facebook. They were doing a bunch of cowboy stuff, and they went ahead and they had clips, and there were long clips, and one of them was from the original Magnificent Seven with Yul Brynner and Steve
Right.
McQueen, and man alive, that's one of my all-time favorite movies for cowboys, and it just hit home, and I ended up spending I don't know how much time going ahead and watching it again and again and again because of the guys that were in it that are all gone, you know. And
Yep.
it's a
Long
shame,
gone.
but yeah. But anyway, let's get back to you since you're my guest. So, what have you been doing lately down there? And I put this down here. I hope it's okay and not disrespectful. I says Len Dorman, a Chicago paranormal transplant
Oh,
to
down at the
Arkansas.
bottom. Yeah.
Is
Uh,
that okay?
that's fine. Uh,
Is that accurate?
everybody, it's accurate. I left Chicago. Of course, when I came to Chicago, I was a Georgia transplant to Chicago, so I'm used to that title. So being a
There
Chicago
you go.
transplant, you got to call it after 14 years. So it's confusing about where I'm from. Am I from Georgia, where I spent almost 40 years? Am I Chicago, where I spent 14 years? Or am I Arkansas, where I spent the last almost 9 years?
I think I probably asked you this already between you and me, but it was
Yep,
why
not on this
why did
show.
you go why did you go to Chicago
To get married.
to get married?
Gail
Okay.
is a native. Yeah, Gail's a native Chicagoan. We met on a British website that was actually their servers were just outside of London, and she was a power lifter. I was a photographer, and we had talked for a couple of years. And I just got out of a relationship. I was dating a 6'2" former model, and
6'2".
she 6'2". And remember, at my tallest, I was only 5'9" and a half, and I am no longer at my tallest. But back then, when we were dating, I, I was 5'9" and a half. You know, your height is like your privates; they shrink with age.
You got it right. You got that right. You got that right, Lynn.
So
I
she actually it's kind of a sad story. She got cancer and wanted to go out to her grandfather out in California, where she was from, and she went out there, spend her last days with her grandfather. And I was going through all this and talking to Gail in a chat room, like the old fashioned chat rooms. Of course, this is in the late '90s, where you had to type everything. There was no
yeah.
picture. There was no talking, and they could hear you over a microphone. It wasn't any of that. Because the smartest phone was barely more than with a flip phone. Excuse me. And we started talking, and we decided to meet at the Arnold, which is a big show put on the last weekend in February or the first weekend in March. It varies year to year. Put on by Arnold Schwarzenegger. So yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger had something to do with me meeting Gail.
Oh wow.
So we decided we meet at the Arnold. There were some rooms available because a guy we knew in Texas usually got 5 or 6 rooms. So what he did, he said, "You take this room to me." It's several different hotels. They picked two in the same hotel. You take this room, and Gail can have this room. And Julia Santana, from her husband was a border guard down in right on, of course, obviously the border. They lived to the south of San Diego in a small town. She was going to fly in to meet Gail because the two of them had really hit it off as friends. They were both power lifters. Julia was actually at the time the 148-pound powerlifting champion of the state of California.
Wow.
So we all
That's
flew into
impressive.
Columbus, Ohio. Me from had to leave Columbus, go to Atlanta. I don't know if you know that much about Georgia, but to when you die, you in any town in the state of Georgia, you are shipped to Atlanta, and then you're shipped to the graveyard. You got to go through Atlanta to get anywhere.
When you're dead?
That's just the way Georgia is. Yeah, you got to go to Atlanta to die and get buried. You got to go to Atlanta first. You leave. They put you in the hearse. You leave the church. You go to Atlanta. You come back down, and they take you to the cemetery.
You got to be kidding me.
Of course I am. But airlines, the only planes that fly out of Columbus is shuttles going to Atlanta. So I had to fly to Atlanta, flew to Columbus, Ohio. Gail flew in from Chicago. Julia flew in from basically San Diego. Her husband took her to San Diego, jumped San Diego. She had to fly to Detroit and then fly into Chicago. The friend that gave us the rooms, he flew in drove to Dallas, short drive. He didn't live far outside of Dallas. Hopped a plane in Dallas, flew straight to Columbus, Ohio. We all met up. We'd never seen each other face to face. And we had a good time. We all got there Friday morning, Thursday afternoon. Got up Friday morning, got in line to get into the Arnold, and that was the first time we'd ever seen each other. And he flew out back to Dallas on Sunday. Julia changed her flight from flying out Sunday to Monday because Gail wasn't flying out to Monday morning. I wasn't flying out to Monday afternoon. So she changed her flight to Monday afternoon. So Gail took off Monday morning, and Julia and I went downtown. I did a photo shoot with her. The guy from Dallas, also a photographer, did a photo shoot with her that Sunday. And 2 months later, I was talking to Gail in a chat room, public chat room, in front of everybody, and proposed to her. And I moved to Chicago that summer.
So that was the only time that you had been with her, was in
Yes.
Atlanta?
Yes. We stayed up all night on Friday night. No, it was Saturday night. No, Sunday. No, the other guy was here. It was Friday night. They had a showing of The Untouchables with Kevin Costner. We stayed up till 4:00 in the morning watching that movie on Friday night, and did the same thing on Saturday night, watching the same movie.
Wow.
So that's how we got together.
That movie had a couple classic lines in it too, didn't it?
Yes, it was two magnificent actors. You can't argue with Kevin Costner and Mr. James Bond, John Connery.
Yeah, he had that one line about if they take 2 year guys. You I can't remember what it was exactly.
If they injure, if they pull a knife, you pull a gun. If they shoot one of your guys, you put one of theirs in the morgue. That's the Chicago way. It's also true down here, except there's all kinds of gun laws in Chicago now, and there's almost none here. It's an open carry down here. Yeah. They do have a what do they call it when you got to put all your information? They do that double check on you. They do have that here.
Okay.
And they checked me and they couldn't find a parking ticket for 20 years. And they said, okay, nobody is that clean. Nobody. So we got to do a double check, and it was almost 3 weeks. It was over 2 weeks, 16, 18 days before I could get a gun down here.
Oh, wow.
Because they were checking on me over and over again, because nobody has a clean record like that. And I have not had a traffic ticket since I was married to my first wife back in the mid 80s. I got a speeding ticket back in the 80s, and I hadn't had a traffic ticket since.
Holy cow! Why don't you
So
give
they didn't
people?
believe it.
Go ahead. I
No,
was
go,
going to say,
no, you go ahead.
why don't you give the people a little idea of everything that you did when you were in Chicago? Because
Oh boy.
you were there and at a very historical time for the paranormal community. And there's a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
that don't realize what was going on then and who the people that were responsible were.
Well, when I started in the paranormal in Chicago, the top dogs were three folks: Ursula Belsky, now I'm drawing a blank. I had all three names just all perfectly lined up, and I forgot.
Richard Crow.
Richard Crow, of course, and Edward Shanahan. Those were the three top people. And I got in a meetup group of all things, which is that's a plunk thing now. Nobody does that. But you did have paranormal. I was looking through it, and because Gail told me to get out and make friends, I said, okay. Hey, I've seen ghosts, and let me see what the paranormal's doing. So I got that meetup group and went to the meeting, and they very shortly after just very few meetings, Edward Shanahan, Ursula Belsky had a get together, book signing out at the Irish Legend.
Okay.
And as you know, that is a very haunted place.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to yell, scream, and pull the entire group because they didn't want to go for various reasons. And they all came out. They did manage to come out there after a whole lot of yelling and screaming and intimidation. I said, why are you here if we're not going to go and meet the top two of the top people in the paranormal in this area, and you don't want to go? What is that? So they went, and everybody fell in love with Ursula. A lot of them followed her for years.
Right.
But we had a great time with talking with those two. Got a little bit of tour of the inside of the Irish Legend, some of the history, some of the hauntings, and just had a great time. We all had a few drinks and looked around. It was a great time with the two of them.
Was that on the other side of the canal? Was that down there where the ballroom was?
Across the street. The Irish Legend, well, it's
Kitty
still there.
corner.
It hadn't moved.
Yeah, it's
right.
It was kitty corner to the ballroom. I can't think of the name of the ballroom.
To the ballroom. I'm just drawing a blank.
We had one of the last.
Ursula had her last con there,
and we were there 2 days before it burned, and then it burned to the ground.
It burned down that week.
Yes,
burned down. It's slammed to the ground. That was where supposedly there were footprints of the devil himself that infiltrated a dance. There was he was dancing with the lady to the music, and she was having a great time. And all of a sudden, he had to leave. And somebody looked down and saw hooves on the floor. So of course he ran, jumped out of a window or a door, balcony, something, and hit the ground and left footprints or hoof prints in the concrete that were supposedly still there. Obviously, hoof prints, looking like it was from a small horse or something.
How
That was
many
part of the
times did
mystique
you,
of going there.
right? How many times did you investigate Resurrection Mary?
We went there. Oh boy, went to the cemetery actually several times. The Melanie Lounge across the street
Right.
from the cemetery,
Right.
where Mary supposedly caught a cab down the road, but only had a 20, and the cabbie couldn't break it. So he goes into Melody Lounge, the bar, to ask for change. He got his change and walked out. Nobody was in the car. He said he would have heard the door open and close because the door to the bar was open, but there was nobody there. That was just one of the instances of Mary coming and going, basically appearing and disappearing. And they still, I guess, to this day, because when I've been gone on 9 years. By the way, my farewell party was held in Melanie
Melody
Lounge.
Lounge. Right.
That night they had a Bloody Mary at the end of the bar closest to the front door.
Right.
If they have a lot of business, they'll make a Bloody Mary sit up there. Go ahead.
I heard a lot, and I saw the film from your going away party. And I don't know where the heck I saw that. It had to be at the Melody Lounge because we would have our Christmas parties there.
Okay.
When I was with GRS with Mr.
Right.
Kazmarek. And
right.
it was that kind of place when you went to go to the men's room that I would walk in there and I would go to the bathroom and I would be going, and I would just stay away.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd go ahead and I'd leave because there was one in there for sure. And I don't know who it was.
Yes, there was. No telling in a bar that's been there as long as that one, had as many owners as it had, and the hauntings that's there. I got some video footage and a few pictures. I'm one of the few people who actually got down to the basement of the
really?
lounge. And yes, I got down in the basement, and there was no reason for a mist to be in the air. Almost like a small bit of fog. We're inside. We're in basically temperature controlled inside a building. We're just inside the basement. It wasn't like it was open to the outside. They couldn't do that. It was either too hot or too cold. So the basement had no openings to the outside, none that were absolutely open. And we closed the door of the basement behind us. There was no circulation. There was no reason for a little bit of fog or mist to form, but there it was.
Holy cow.
And the whole time we were there, the three of us were not alone. There was three of us that were rather creeped out, but all three of us had nerves, and we stayed there when a lot of people would turn tail and run, or just left, just said, I'm done, and walked out the door. We stayed down there. Even went over. It was, I don't remember if it was an EVP. I didn't do it. Did an EVP or Ghost Box? I don't remember which. We heard a leave.
Wow.
So whatever was down there, of course, did not want us there. I mean, you hear that all the time. It's kind of corny, but you hear what you hear.
Yeah. Yeah, that whole entire area down there. If you had to pick, your three favorite locations that you investigated in Chicago, what would they be?
Uh, Melody Lounge might be just out of the three. I would have to go with the top three in no particular order. I'm not going to sit here and try to figure out who's
No.
three, who's two, and who's one. But you want three, I'll give you three. Uh, Ethel's Party Bar on the edge of Chinatown, the Irish Legend, and of course Bachelor's Grove. You might want to
Did
put
you?
Bachelor's Grove at one if you want to do that.
No, I'm just curious because I've been at we filmed that documentary at Bachelor's Grove with Chuck Williams, and that was with Dale when we were all with Dale's group, and
Right.
we did that 1,000 words it's called, and we did that documentary there, and we were like the second people to be able to be there after dark. But we had, I think there were nine of us that were followed around by camera crews, and they were all Chuck's friends, Chuck Williams, and that we did that for the preliminary, and then if we had any hot spots that we found going through the whole entire cemetery, then those we had to mark those on a map, and then they took the maps and they put them together, and that's how they based the real investigation, was on the spots that we had got poked or whatever on, and it was quite an interesting evening for me because I
I
never
bet.
thought that you would be able to get in to there, but I was drawn from, where the little child's grave is, where they constantly put all the little trinkets and things on.
Right. That is,
Okay,
that is the
so
biggest plot in the cemetery.
right, so if you
So
look
I
from
know I
there,
know exactly what you're talking about.
if you're looking at it and you look over into the corner where the old fence met the new fence, they say
Yeah.
that's where that hat man is, or the real slender man, or whatever he is, the real tall guy, the dark shadow
Right.
figure. And we were going towards the corner, and it would look like I thought maybe it was a log or something that was there, but then it moved. So we talked about that a
Right.
little bit, but there, there's been so many groups that have come in there and started to do bad things in there. As
Right.
far as the devil worship type atmosphere, and that kind of thing. And I think that's what drew in more of that negativity. But the day,
Have you ever studied the history of the place?
not I haven't really gotten all
I'm
the way
sorry. Go
through
ahead.
it. Go ahead.
Okay. Some of the history that we've gone through, and this is other people's work, and people can read it. The site is still open. It's not maintained. Carl and Wendy had a big bad breakup. Wendy's married to somebody else in the New England area. Carl's gone back to being a biker. He's not in the paranormal anymore. I wish somebody take over that site, talk to Carl, and give him the passwords. I don't know if Carl's got it or not. Wendy might be taking that over, and the passwords are gone. I've been thinking about copying the site, so I'll have a copy before it's dropped by whoever the server is. But if you go to the path to bachelorsgrove.com, you can see all kinds of history. There was originally there was an Indian village. Edward Shanahan knew where it was. He tried to keep it a secret, but other people found out. And Another guy, I'm not going to name names here, actually ran into a Native American there in the evening when you're supposed to be leaving the area. But he lived in the area, so he could walk there. He didn't get caught too much. The Native American was walking in. This is during the wintertime with some blankets. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm communing with my ancestors." So there was an active Native village back there. Most of them got wiped out, apparently, by another Native American group. And that's what's cursed the land. The land itself has got a curse on it. It's got blood on it. That's the problem. It's not the cemetery. It's the land it's on and the woods around the area. That's what makes Bachelor's Grove a very bad place at night. It's calmed down now because the desecration has stopped. The guy you were talking about, the tall guy, is supposedly the former caretaker who watches over you, and he will cause somebody he doesn't know, doesn't trust, a few issues. But y'all were not doing anything bad. I know you. I know most of the people you were with, and I would trust any of them not to desecrate Bachelor's Grove.
All right.
There might be other issues, but none of them would do that.
That's stupidity. That's
so
sheer
he probably was
stupidity.
just watching. It is. Exactly. He was watching y'all to be sure you didn't. And you saw him watching you and the other people with you. He's the one that kind of watches. He was, like I said, former caretaker. He kind of watches stuff. But there's some crazy stuff there. One time I was there at night, and some people there get attacked. You will get tested. You will be tested. That was what the little hot spots were, tests to see if you would cut and run or see if you would get hostile or do something wrong. But they will test you. The way I was tested, I was feeling fine. There was nothing wrong with me. And all of a sudden, my belly turned and I had, excuse my French, all the kiddies, please go to bed right now, okay? I'll give you a few seconds. Okay, everybody under 20 is in bed now. Okay, I can say this. I was given projectile diarrhea that shot out about 4 feet out of my butt. I emptied my entire colon 4 feet or more behind me. Just one shot, I was over it, and my belly wasn't even upset at all when I got over it. Normally, if you get diarrhea, you feel bad before and you feel bad afterward. I felt bad 5 seconds before. I barely had time to drop my pants and let it go.
Where the heck were you
so
at when that happened?
Inside Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. Fortunately, close to the front gate.
Yeah.
And I ran over to the ditch across the way, and that's as far as I could go, about 15 feet out of the gate. And I had to literally go, and I had no more troubles the rest of the night. I didn't feel much of anything. I felt I was being watched. I was never alone, but it would have been a creepy feeling to somebody else. It was not a creepy feeling to me. Another group came in that didn't know much about it, so I told them about the history of it, and for about an hour, I gave them a tour of the whole cemetery, telling them the history, like I'd done so many times during the day. I did one at 1 o'clock in the morning, lasted to 2 o'clock. They left, and I was alone from 2 o'clock till daybreak. At daybreak, I was joined by 2 coyotes.
Wow. Now, you didn't have... What about the police? Weren't the police watching the place when that was going on, or did that come out later on?
No.
Wow.
I didn't see any that night. They're supposedly kept people out, but most people that get caught are either loud, they got white flashlights waving them all around, and you can be standing in the highway, in the middle of that basically a 5-lane highway there, with street lights shining in your face, and you can still see people running around with flashlights in the cemetery. And that's the way they usually went. I strictly used infrared light. Unless they looked straight at the light and saw two little tiny red lights there, they couldn't see any of the lighting I was using.
That's amazing. You know, the
And
way that
I was. You remember, you've been in the military before.
Yeah.
I have practically been in the Army before. I worked with Fort Benning for years. I was a DJ at an officers club. I was an officer in the management association. I went to college. I went 3.25 years, 3 years and a quarter, to college in Building 4 at Fort Benning, now called Fort Moore, of course. But so I've been hanging around the military for years. I played rugby on the Fort Benning team in the late 70s. And so I know a lot about military. I had a major in business and a minor in ranger training. What I did, I took my hands and used the same camo SEALs and Special Forces use, the grease paint. The back of my hands was covered. I wore a dark shirt that even an infrared light would not reflect much. You got to watch your blue jeans. Blue jeans shine very brightly on the infrared light, so you got to watch those. You got to wear clothes that UV just bounces off of them. It doesn't bounce off. It just, you can't see it. They don't reflect UV light. And my whole face was camoed. I could stand there in the middle of the place, and unless you shined a flashlight on me, because I was there with no moon, the tiny little crescent moon was down, almost by just at nightfall. I could be standing there 20 feet from you, and you couldn't see me. I almost made a Marine, active duty Marine, crap his pants. He had seen a tripod. There was a group that I was telling you about that you gave the tour to.
Yeah.
His 4 buddies were separated from him. I was standing there behind a tree, I was watching them. If my head hadn't been camo, they'd have seen me, but they couldn't see me. I turned a very bright flashlight on, hit his buddies in the face with that white light, which, if you've got your night vision, your pupils are open. I instantly slammed shut their pupils. They couldn't see their hand in front of their face. And in 2 quick jumps on my toes, I covered the 10 or 12 feet to where he was standing from where I was, got nose to him, and I said, who the hell are you, and what the hell are you doing here? He froze, and it was a 30, 40 seconds. He started stuttering his stammer and said, how the hell did you do that? Get that close to me. You could have had a knife and stabbed me 3 or 4 times before I even knew you were there. Because he just didn't believe I got that close to him without him seeing something.
That's a pretty dark location.
At
night.
It's a pretty dark location. You got the lights, the street lights from the highway shining in there, but it's a fairly dark with no moon and no clouds. Now, if you go in the dark on a cloudy night close to Chicago, you get that pink light from the clouds that's reflecting the city lights. This is a perfectly clear night. So it was as dark as it gets in Bachelor's Grove. And I pulled that trick on an active duty Marine. And he wanted to know details of how I did it. I said, look, I hung around Fort Benning. I knew a lot of Rangers, and they taught me a few tricks. He said, okay, that explains that. And then he could see, looking at me, shining a light in my face a little bit, saw my hands, that I was dressed. The only thing further I could have done for camouflage is jumped into a ghillie suit.
Yeah.
If I'd have had a ghillie suit, I'd been wearing it.
So from Bachelor's Grove, you know, that because that's just not the cemetery. The complex has that supposedly that house at the back end of it that appears and disappears. And then there's that creek
Yes,
back there that goes through
yes.
that carries a lot of a real lot of energy to it. Uh
Well, that's
I
where
I
the Native American village where they got wiped out
is that's
is
where that
about
was?
50, 60 yards the other side of the creek.
Okay.
Maybe 50 or 60 yards from the. You got to walk past the cemetery to the creek where the old bridge was on the old Midlothian Highway.
Okay.
Cross that creek and walk about 50 or 60 yards down that path, and, and walk past the first house you come to. And on your way, curving around to the second house, the one with the silo house is what we called it. In that area was where the Native American village was.
Have you ever seen that house that appears and disappears?
No, I have not. I have looked, but I never saw the house. I talked to only a couple of people who did, and they swear there it is. You know, it was there, right there. And I started walking toward it and disappeared. And everybody knows that person, third or fourth person, who went running through the woods trying to get to the house, and the house disappeared on them. You know, there's the old wives' tale about somebody running through the woods and
Right.
catching the house, and when the house disappeared, they disappeared. But that's rumors, and you know, whatever. Unless I talked to the person that was standing there, I wouldn't believe it, and I would hardly believe it then. Because a story like that, somebody disappearing, you know, when a house just basically a mirage disappeared, I would have to be standing there to believe it.
There's a lot of
There was, if you go back there to the first house, to follow the path. That is an established walking trail, by the way. When you
yes.
cross the creek, take the path. It converges right there, and you see one going to the left. That's the back way, and going to the right. You can take the one, either one, and come back around to the other just by following the path. Yes, in summertime it's kind of hard to see because it gets grown up. So the best time to do it is early spring before it gets grown up, or the wintertime when everything dies down before the snows hit. But there's an established path. There is one house that you pass. If you take the right fork, you'll pass a house. That one has a little bit of haunting to it. Occasionally, you can get a voice there. You can get an EVP, or if you got a ghost box or something, you might hear a voice or two. Not a whole lot. It's not that active. Uh, but you go a little bit further, you're in Native American village, and it's creepy. It is dark, even during the summertime when the sun's straight up. The foliage is heavy. I was at that house once. Gail went. The only time Gail ever went close to the place, she was in the parking lot across Midlothian Highway,
Right.
and I said, "Okay, if anybody is here at this house, show me a sign." I said that several times, and all of a sudden, it went totally black. It went from a clear sky to totally black in just a few seconds. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be trapped here with a whole bunch of rain. But I thought about getting up and running back across the creek before it did rain because I didn't want the creek to rise. Good Lord went in the creek to rise. I didn't want that creek to rise. To answer Victoria's question, I don't. You'll have to put that in a room in YouTube.
Here, I'll put it up.
Okay. That's the first statement. We end our life to cross over, go to the light, leave this world behind, etc. Why then go to a cemetery in the middle of the night to investigate? That's because if you know a spirit's name, you can speak nice to it, introduce yourself, they will eventually come to you wherever they are. They hear it. Some are stuck there. One Civil War vet that's buried in Baxter's Grove, uh, he kind of shows up at will. Uh, Not everybody in the United States is a Christian. In fact, Christians are a minority in this country. They don't want to admit it, but they're a minority. There's more of everything else than Christians. There's a lot of agnostic people here. I've known a bunch of Christians that went agnostic. I've known agnostics to go Christian all of a sudden. It goes back and forth. And yes, Victoria, I have contacted people. I've used the internet and contacted people 1,000 miles away. So to answer that question, now I have had where we're going to a StreamYard or a Zoom, where you have 4, 5, 6, I don't care however many. StreamYard lets you have up to 10 windows open. A guest of a show. If you've ever wanted to host 9 other people, Greg, you can.
Yeah.
But I've done that using ghost boxes and had people talk that are 1,000 miles away.
Oh.
If you talk to a psychic, I've seen psychics work from different countries come in. I did 2 or 3 things with a psychic that lived in Brazil. I've done ghost box sessions and talked to people when the ghost box is in Vancouver, Canada, and talked to a spirit that was actually local, closer to me. So you're absolutely right, Victoria. You can talk to a lot of people anytime.
Victoria,
I've got ghost box sessions where
she's part of our show
her?
on Wednesdays, yes. And she's from down in Texas.
Oh, okay. Hello, Victoria. It's nice to meet you.
And
okay.
Hello,
Victoria. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Remarkable lady, and it's great to know that once again we all have a different way of looking at things in the paranormal community. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. Everybody's has their own way of looking at things, whether they're spirits or not. And she is really, really good. And she's done some excellent work. She's Mike Ricksacker. Do you know Mike?
Of course.
Okay, well,
yes, I know Mike. I know Mike for years.
She's on his show, The Rabbit Hole. So that's and I've been with her. She's been on my show for quite some time now. She's done an awesome job, and she's always
very big.
Mm-hmm. She's a Texas girl.
It's an
100%.
honor to meet you, Victoria. That's an honor. What part of Texas?
She's sort of like out west, right? She'll answer it. I can't think because we just came back from San Antonio.
Because remember, I'm not that far from Texas. I can drive from Texarkana and be there an hour and a half from here.
She says I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Middle of nowhere? Well, there's a lot of places that's the middle of nowhere in Texas. Texas has a lot of nowhere.
Yeah.
No offense, but it's a big ass state.
She says southwest of Fort Worth.
Southeast of Fort Worth. She is in the middle of nowhere. She's in one of those zones I'm talking about that Texas has several of. That's not really that close to anything.
And I want to tell everybody in the chat.
Again, no offense.
I don't know why nobody is using their names, but there's everybody above Victoria is all Facebook user, and I know some of them. I have the feeling I know who they are, but that happens.
Okay.
I don't know.
I am
Maybe I
not
hit the
getting
wrong
the
button.
Facebook comments, which is I'm getting only the YouTube, and I've only seen Victoria.
Well, the other ones were all, they were talking about be having a great show. And
Okay, y'all.
uh,
Here is some Minnesota Association of Paranormal Studies said, "Hey guys," and then his Facebook user said, "Hello, Greg and Lynn."
right. So, I mean, and the ones above it are all
Victoria.
Facebook user.
Victoria, if you want to put the next post up, Greg, you're in a little bitty country town with 10,000 people. Victoria, I live a mile outside of a town of just over 2,200 people. I have to go 30 miles to the north to get to a town of 43,000, which is Pine Bluff, and got to drive 30 miles to the south to get to a town of 4,500 or 4,300. It's close to 45. I think it's maybe 4,300 people in Monticello, Arkansas. If I want to go to Walmart, I've got to go to one of those two towns because that's the closest Walmart's to me.
And she says, thanks for answering. I was curious. We have several small cemeteries, many times not in the best areas. I never understood why people go there to contact people when they go to a park and do the same. I don't know.
Well, another thing, Victoria, it depends on the cemetery. Here locally, I've been to several cemeteries. Here, there's one right up the hill from me. I have not contacted anybody in those cemeteries. In one of them, a few miles further from here, nice cemetery, actually had a small Civil War skirmish. Let's not call it a battle when 5 people get killed. Okay, let's just call this a skirmish. You had the old Army Road outside of Star City, where I live close to, and you had a Union cavalry and a Confederate infantry were going in opposite directions on the same road. And of course, during the Civil War, you know what's going to happen when something like that happens. There's going to be some shooting, and I think there was 4 or 5 people killed. I've different people say different things. I heard only one was killed from one source, and that was the commander of the cavalry, a lieutenant. But everybody says he was killed. There are some people that say 3 or 4 others were killed. And that was right there at that cemetery. So you think if any cemetery is going to be haunted, it's going to be a one where people fell and at least one, at a bare minimum, died. You think that'd be haunted, but it's not. I've checked it out. None of the soldiers will answer to contact. And nobody at the cemetery, you can hold a ghost box in there, and all you hear is some remote radio signals. I've tried it with Echo Vox and got nothing. All I got was that Echo Vox has, and that's also all they have in the library is partial sounds, basically vowels and consonants, the sound of them. But of course, if I said I got something everywhere, I'd be lying, because you don't. And that's one place I got nothing. So it depends on your cemetery. Some of them are really quiet, some are really busy, and I think the desecration in Bachelor's Grove is one thing causing it, plus the Indian battle that was there, all the unrest, all the drama that happened when the Bachelors were there, the German Bachelors, and the tragedy they met up with was there.
What was that story? What's that story?
And then the desecration.
What about the German bachelors? What's this story?
They tried to get wives. They had a tuberculosis outbreak, and they had constant crop failures. They thought they could clear the land and grow crops. But of course, they did not have modern fertilizer, so you could say that's an issue. Woods, ask Brazil this, they know more than anybody on the planet, that when you plow woods, cut trees down, dig up the stumps, however you get them up, it's not the most fertile ground to grow corn or anything else on. What grows corn is, it can't grow because it doesn't have that stuff in a forested area. Crop rotation would have helped, but fertilizer, at least spread some manure in there or something to roll it up. Of course, we're talking about early 1800s, so we're talking about late 1700s technology was all they had. They barely had horses to pull their plows. It used to be farmland, and they had constant failures because they did not. Victoria brought up a great point. Thank you for doing that. They didn't do crop rotation, never heard of it. They also never heard of soybeans, because you can sit there and plant soybeans in a field, half your field, and plant corn on the other, and then rotate it, grow copper where your soybeans was, and grow soybeans where your corn was. And so you know what I'm talking about, Victoria. The soybeans puts nutrients back in the soil that the corn and cotton or whatever you're growing takes out. And they didn't know about soybeans. They didn't know about putting clover in the fields. They just planted stuff and hoped it grew, and of course it failed. And the whole community failed. That's why there's nothing but foundations there. And then when they moved the Midlothian Highway, the couple of families that were there, the Forest Reserve bought their property at real basic prices and basically got run out. And that foundation closest to the highway is to the left. There's a path to the left. That's the big circle path. You can go to the backside, keep on going to that path. And there is a path leading off that will lead you to a great big circle and take you right back to the beginning. Go past that path, take path number 2. That actually is a fork off that main path. And there's a house there, foundation there. And you can see some of the remains. That place you can't get anything there. But the people who lived there were actually almost thrown out of their home. They did not want to leave. They did not want to sell. And that created a whole bunch of issues there. So you've got Native American issues. You've got the German immigrants had issues. And then you had the later issues when they moved the Midlothian Highway there. Plus, all the talk about gangs being there. I will tell you that put seeds in that's an idea. I can't grow anything personally. I can get the best soil in the world, put a dandelion in it, and the dandelion will die. If I touch it, try to water it, I will kill a dandelion.
The big next question. You went ahead and I watched a special. I think it was your special that was done about Richard Crowe and the Biograph Theater on the anniversary. Do you remember that?
In front, I did not go in the theater that night because they had a play going on.
No, but I mean,
I was in there earlier in the day before the play started. But we started filming. I started filming,
right?
Right. What Richard Crowe did.
Okay.
We were in the Bachelor's Grove. We were standing in front of the Bachelor's Grove Theater at the exact time, because he had the time to the minute. The time that John Dillinger walked out of the Biograph Theater, he started walking down and talking, and the whole group followed him, and I was recording, walking down at a rather slow pace. We were in a crowd, and they were in a crowd at that time too. Because back then, people went to Biograph. There was a huge crowd in the place back when it was one whole theater. They went there to get out of the heat. No place, very few places were air conditioned except maybe a morgue. or in theaters. That's why they put out so many movies, because people would go to a movie house 2 or 3 days a week just to get out of the heat. And we walked down, and Richard talked, and he watched his watch, timed it to where we got to the alley at the very second on the anniversary of the shooting. And then at the very spot where he died, he wasn't dead when he hit the ground. He was alive for a few seconds. He would get a fresh beer, pop the top, and pour it on the spot where Dillinger died.
Who got the beer?
Richard did.
Or Richard did?
Yeah, he got a beer. I don't know where he put it, probably in a coat pocket, and just all of a sudden a beer's in his hand, and he's pouring it on the ground. And then we all turn around. We sang the. He also had a bagpipe band. I forgot to mention the bagpipe band leading us. The bagpipe struck up, and we sung "Amazing Grace," the long version. He handed out copies of the long version. So we sat for several minutes singing "Amazing Grace," and then had a lady in red, which of course is not the way it goes. And he says that, and some of the girls knew it. The dress was not red. The neon lights on the biograph turned her orange dress to a red tone. She couldn't say a red dress. The prostitute or the madam had to wear something that would stand out. So she wore a very orange dress. And it confused the FBI for a few seconds before they caught on, saw her, she kind of nodded, and they knew that was Dillinger with her. Because Dillinger had some very early plastic surgery, so they wasn't sure. So they were looking for a woman with an orange dress. She comes out, the neon light says turns it red, but the further she walked out of the neon light, the dress got red again, and they knew this is John Dillinger. And a couple of them opened fire and basically shot him in the back. Of course, he was supposedly drawing his gun, but you don't want John Dillinger drawing a gun. You don't want to give him the chance. You got to get rid of him. I mean, in today's world, the police would do the same thing.
Do you have that film of that?
Yes, I have those recordings. It was two videos that I recorded. I've got it on. I believe it's on my desktop, and I also have it on a external hard drive, so don't lose. I've got at least 2 copies.
Well, for everybody that's here that doesn't know who Richard Crowe was, why don't you tell them who Richard Crowe was?
Oh my gosh, Richard Crowe put Baxter's Grove on the map. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody knew anything about it. The locals used it to grow up. You were a senior in the local high school. You were not fully a man, and you were not fully graduated until you went to Baxter's Grove Cemetery in the middle of the night and knocked over some headstones and got drunk.
No.
It was just a rite of passage. Call it crazy, call it stupid, but a lot of locals, that's how they spent their prom night. If they didn't have dates, they're the ones that went to Baxter's Grove. It was also a proper area for parking right outside where they drive their cars down, and they'd lots of girls probably got pregnant there. Probably a lot of people lost their virginity there, right outside the cemetery. There was the old wives' tale about the murderer would go down and kill somebody in the cars. There was a story about a couple went down there, and they were by themselves. There was no other cars down there, and there was some noise outside the car. They were, about to do the deed, and she heard some noise and heard it again, and and he said, okay, put his pants back on, jumped out. Supernatural Inc. Paranormal Technology. Hello, everyone. Hello back. Anyway, he got out of the car and she heard nothing. She gave him a few minutes, started calling his name, and she heard something that would kind of be on the roof of the car. And of course, a loud ticking noise, something like something just scraping the car just a little, the roof of the car just a little bit. That gets very loud when it is very quiet.
Yes.
It kept going, tick, 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 on almost regular basis. Well, finally, she just sat there in terror for a long time. The police finally showed up, and she saw the police cars coming, of course, with lights on, and she started screaming. And they told her, "Do not get out of the car," which, of course, the opposite of what most police tell you now. Even if you're a 10-year-old kid, get out of the car, show me your hands, get out of the car, hit the ground. That's what they want to do. No, they said, don't get out of the car, stay where you are. Don't get out. She gets out of the car anyway and screams and passes out. What happened? They had cut his throat, and his body was hanging over the car and was brushing against the top of the car.
That's crazy.
Like that. Yeah, that's a good ghost story. Scared the hell out of people.
I think
there's no evidence of it outside of wives' tales and ghost stories.
But I wanted to touch on not only Bachelor's Grove but the Biograph, because I remember that those two tapes, and it would be great for you sometime in the near future to go ahead and run those again, because then people would get a good look at what Richard Crowe was all about. Plus, you were entirely different back then too. Not like you and me are today.
I was getting into the paranormal. To go back to what Richard Crowe did, he put Bachelor's Grove on the map. The reason he couldn't go in there at night, what he would do is stand on the bridge, take pictures, and he had a reel-to-reel recorder to record voices.
Did he have a little one?
Because he couldn't go in there at night. He had what technology allowed. I imagine he had a big one to start with, and that kind of got smaller with time. But it was just the reel-to-reels. And you know what I'm talking about. Everybody else, I would say it's like a big cassette, but it's not. You don't know what a cassette is. It's a reel about this big around. This got recording tape about that wide, brown, that goes through a device that can read the tape, goes to another reel, so I call it reel to reel. It goes through that, goes to the other one, and records sounds. And you can play it back to record sound. It plays decent music. It's not as good as the vinyl. It's not as good as a CD. A CD is not as good as vinyl. Vinyl is still the best way to listen to music, in my opinion. But I'm an old fart. But he did that with old equipment and was the first person to ever investigate it. And the stories he told in the media, he was recorded many times by Chicago media, papers, TV, and I don't even know how many appearances he made in radio. It's all recorded, and sometimes it's played. Talking to Richard Crowe on a nostalgia night, especially around Halloween. Yep, Victoria, portable, battery operated, great, 4 or 5 great big D-cell batteries. It's about that big around. It doesn't fit anything now.
That's Jenny here
And that's
too
what he was
from
using,
Iowa.
very primitive equipment.
Hey, Jenny.
Oh, okay. And he developed the first haunted tour of Chicago. That Ursula came in later and was a rival to. But Richard had the original. Eventually, he came up in buses. Like I said, he got better and better recorders. But he also got better and better buses. The first one was then he got better and better to where he would just rent a really nice, 200,000
Big
bus,
travel bus.
that set 50 or 60 people. Yeah, he'd pack all the people in on 2 levels, like a big, like an oversized Greyhound, except it was really nice. The kind Methodist churches are bad about renting those to go on a church retreat. Nothing against the Methodists, but they usually have the best buses, better than Baptist. I always noticed that. I come up as a Presbyterian, went to a Baptist church, and every time I went to an interdenominational meeting, the Methodists that were there always had the best buses. And Richard Crowe had what I always called a Methodist bus. Big, nice. One time, he and Ursula Belsky were at the same spot on their tour. And Richard Crowe would never speak to Ursula. Never did. All she said, "Hey, Richard." And he may have had eye contact, Ursula says, for a second, maybe 2. And that's all she ever got out of Richard Crowe. Which is an amazing story in itself. Oh, and let me tell you this. After Richard Crowe died, he had a tour scheduled, one more tour, booked, and didn't have time after his death to say he wasn't going to be there. Because he was in the hospital for a little while. He thought he'd get back out, but he never did. Because he had some pancreatitis, and then they found a cancer in there. He got killed by having the personal bits glands combined with cancer, and that's what killed him so fast. A very aggressive cancer. But he had one more tour. They all showed up, and I told the tour guide that was subbing for him, get Ursula. He said, Richard would have a fit. I said, you don't want to do the tour. You've never done this tour before. Get Ursula to do the tour. So he broke protocol by me asking him to, talked to Ursula, and of course she jumped at it. Ursula did the tour, and the tour guide come up there and started talking over the mic. The big buses had the big nice PA mics. He was talking to her, gesturing to the crowd. He said, I have a special guest for you tonight, Ursula Belsky. Hands her the mic. She grabs the mic. She keys it, says, hello, everybody. It's good to meet you. Except not a word went over the system. Not a sound. She unkeyed the mic, keyed it again, tried it. Not one sound came out of the speakers. The tour guide took it, talked in it. You could hear him. Okay, it's working now. Here's the mic, Ursula. Here's Ursula Belsky. She keys it up. Nothing. The speakers refused to put her voice over the PA the entire tour. She had to walk up and down the aisle, kind of talking loud so they could hear her. And yeah, that was Richard.
Yeah.
And another little Richard Crowe tale that'll get you going. You remember, you were there when we did the Camp Douglas investigation. Yeah. You were there with Dale, wasn't you?
I believe so.
Anyway, I believe you were. That I had to rent a pickup truck to move all the stuff. Gail picked it up from What's that? That's not Menards. Yes, Menards. Menards. She rented the truck from Menards, came there. We picked up all the stuff, and I said, "Drop me off here. I got to meet somebody else for another investigation." And she went to Menards to return the truck. Since she rented, she had to go anyway. She held on the receipt. They looked at the time, threw it into their computer. The computer refused to register her ever renting the truck. Nothing in their computer system said that she rented the truck for any period of time. There she was. The fact she got the truck, but they didn't register her even driving off the truck. So they charged her for the basic renting of the truck, and that's it. No time. She got charged for the lowest base price, even though she had the truck for several hours. The computer didn't register it. So, and how does that work? And Galen and I just looked at each other and said, Richard was looking out for you and manipulated the computer where I didn't get charged. And I was on, you know Bob, don't you? On the radio show, he does hand readings down in Chicago. Bob Trezak.
Oh, Bob Trezak.
Anyway,
I know the name.
Yeah, Bob Trezak. Okay.
Okay.
I was on his show several times when he was broadcasting out of a radio station at a high school on South End. Well, Carl was supposed to be there and couldn't. He got called away to work. So Gail and I showed up, so we were the only guests. And all of a sudden, I started looking over my left shoulder because something was there. Kept on looking, there was nothing there. And Bob finally said, Lynn, what are you looking at? I said, I believe Richard Crowe has walked in. Because we all bought some cookies to eat during the radio show. And we all looked up, and there was a partial apparition in that studio with us with headphones and a microphone sitting in front of us on a full radio show, actually broadcasting not only on the internet, but there was an antenna outside the house. We were actually on the radio, on radio frequency. You could dial in really low in the 90s and pick up the show. And we all said, Richard Crowe is standing over there by the cookies wanting a cookie, wanting to eat. Because if you knew Richard Crowe, this was brought up at his wake. Richard Crowe never met a buffet he didn't like. And that was a personal experience I had with Richard Crowe's spirit. There he was. He never had anything against me. At that meeting you're talking about where you want me to show the video of, I got there 2.5 hours early, talked to the doorman at the bar across the street from the Biograph. And I said, I'm here for the Richard Crowe event. He said, okay. And I said, is Richard Crowe here? Yes. Where is he? He's right there at the bar. For 2.5 hours, Richard Crowe and I sat there and talked Ghost. We talked Civil War. We talked the Wild, Wild West. For 2.5 hours, me and him talking. That's it. And nobody except a TV interviewer got 2.5 hours. And I think most of their interviews was an hour, hour and a half. I got 2.5 hours one-on-one with Richard Crowe. Nobody's ever done that. And of course, we were drinking. By the time we were done talking, we weren't feeling any pain because we were sitting there. I think I was drinking the same thing he was. I think it was either bourbon or rum. I don't remember which, and Coke. So we definitely had our buzz on. Some of the pictures I took were him with some of the tour group that was with him, and he had a medal, but of course it was a plugged Tommy gun. I took several pictures of people posing with that and him posing with it. Also got a good shot of a girl delivering a pizza with a skirt that should have been illegal. And I took the camera and followed the girl instead of following Richard, and had a big laugh at the end of that video that you're talking about. And of course, we went back to the bar at that tour and just listened to the bagpipes again, and then we dispersed after the Lady in Red competition. And yes, that year, a girl that was actually wearing an orange dress won.
Wow. Yeah, that's right. They did have them, didn't they?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Here's the
Yeah.
last question.
There was he lined the girls up. Where would you like to investigate? My number one place I'd want to investigate, if money was no limit, just my fantasy place of investigating, the White House. No president there, no first lady there, have the place empty, turn the lights out, and let me walk around that place for a couple of nights with my paranormal equipment, just me and the paranormal equipment. That would be my fantasy investigation.
That would be really cool. Well, we got 10:25, Len. We started at 9:00, so we've exceeded our limit, but we can go another 5 minutes. We'll cut it out at 10:30. But
okay.
I don't
you
know
asked me about Richard Crowe. Some of the adventures I had.
He's
do what now?
To me, he's a famous person. Okay, in the history of the paranormal in the city of Chicago, like you are, and a few other guys. Ed Shanahan for sure. And and I've known Ed for a little bit now, and I find him very, very knowledgeable too, and that's the kind of thing that's needed for the paranormal community in the city of Chicago, because there's not a lot of other people that can. Now the new guys, that Jack Chavez's team, and he hangs around with, I think, 2 or 3 of the other guys that, and I apologize because I can't remember all your names, but there's a father and son, and they do tours down there too. They're all part of that tour group, and I think the father actually got the contract in Chicago now, I want to say. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I apologize. But I think that's exactly what I saw. They were on Facebook probably 6, 7 months ago, maybe a year ago. It could be already, about doing the tours, because there's so much going on down there. You could. And the other one was it wasn't Hell House. What's the name of that? Hull House. Isn't
Hull
that
House?
Hull House is
where Rosemary's Baby was supposed to be based.
Right. That was the basis for
the demon baby was supposedly born.
Right. They brought the baby in and gave it to them in the house. Right. Dropped it off, right?
I actually was there one night, and my camera would not work. But with that happens sometimes. And I actually saw a partial apparition of a woman walking down the banister, walking down the staircase.
That's got to be a phenomenal. I've never been in there. I've never been in that place before, but I don't know.
Gail and I went in there during the daytime, during a tour. Well, it was a self tour, and we were the only ones in the house, so we could stay in there as long as we want. So we took our own sweet time, and I went in every room they allowed me in that house.
How was the energy in there?
Uh, a little bit tense. Some people would call it creepy. There are definitely spirits in there. Uh, you can, outside of the recordings that are in each room telling the history of the room, there are other voices if you listen. But if you keep it quiet and you stand still, you can actually hear. You got to get everybody cleared out, and then fortunately, Gail and I had nobody was there but us. There are voices in there. It was Gail wanted to leave, but you know me, I said no. Sometime I'll tell you about a spirit that I actually had as a voluntary attachment that I took to an Ed Shanahan event where he was trying to contact the spirit, and I brought 3 child spirits into his event. I'll tell you that story sometime.
Okay, we will do that on a follow up. This one here is from Ireland again, and it's, what is your thought of day and night investigation and why? That's a PIX question.
Nighttime is usually quieter. Yeah, during the daytime you got sunlight, and you can't see light anomalies during the day unless you black out the curtains or go in the basement where there's no windows or go in the attic where there's no windows. That's the thing. You could have light anomalies all shooting all around you during the day and you can't see them. A shadow figure you can see. The ghosts are around you during the day. They are. They're just harder to see with a light, and they're harder to hear with all the commotion that daytime brings. You know, people driving around, people walking around, people talking. That's the difference, and that's why there's a difference there, and why I would rather investigate the night, because using UV and IR light, I can see a figure that's a dark figure because there's a shadow, and I can also see the light anomalies, and the light anomalies are impossible to see during the day.
Well, the Madonna, I think that's what it's called in Bachelor's Grove. The woman that was sitting on the base of the tombstone.
Yes.
That I can't remember
Amelia.
her name right now.
Amelia Patrick Humphrey.
What the no that's the one that was supposedly sitting there, right?
That's right.
Wasn't it one of the
was
sisters?
By Judy Huff.
Judy Huff. And she has a sister.
Nope. Judy Huff took the photo. She took that photo. Her and Dale have he explained to me they have co-copyright on that photo, because Dale, if you're there anywhere under the Ghost Research Society banner with him, what you take with your camera is not all yours, especially if he bought the film for you. And him and Judy have that agreement where if you want to show that for profit, you're theoretically supposed to get Judy and Dale to sign off on it. He lets me use the photo because I always give him credit. I always say, this is Judy Huff, Dale Casimir, Ghost Research Society. They took this photo, and that's all he wants.
So for all you people that have never seen that photo, that's like the big photo in the paranormal community for has been for a long time now. And it's the most clear.
It took me 2 years of investigation. Mm-hmm.
To try to disprove
it's most clear. And it took me 2. Yep. The negative has been checked by various people. The negative has not been touched. That was taken with high speed, 35 millimeter infrared film. That's why they got it.
And it was taken during the daylight.
It was taken during the day, but she would only show up probably on infrared film. Normally, she's totally invisible unless you can see her moving through the air, but you got to focus your eyes kind of weirdly. It gives me a headache. Uh, where I can see her moving through the air, through the dust particles and pollen in the air, and that's how I got to see her. And studying at the Humphrey House is how I traced back, and the reason she was there every evening was because her daughter, firstborn child, is still buried in Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. She was not exhumed in '89 when they took out about half the bodies. There were no
Wow.
Patricks and there were no Humphreys in the area to move her to Park Cemetery where the rest of her family is buried. Her siblings, her mother and father are buried, which caused unrest because you've got a spirit there that's with second cousins, maybe a distant uncle that she didn't even know because she died at 11 months and 4 days old. And I
Uh,
can't post pictures as a guest. I don't know if Greg's got the picture or not. You'll have to
no, I
catch
don't.
my show whenever I'm on. If you follow me on YouTube or Facebook, you'll see the announcement of when my show's going to be the day before. And I always post and put a banner up. And if you ask me in there, I've got the picture on my StreamYard account.
There,
Then I can
that's
post it
the
in a
big
second.
thing is, the picture has been very hard for people to get a hold of. And I know Lenny would have it because Lenny was part of that group of people back in the day when it was taken by Judy. And I know I've seen the
Mm-hmm.
picture a dozen times, if not more. And Judy was with us at our booth when Chuck Williams and I worked together, and she was with us at, and it was at the ballroom.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last time that I saw Judy Huff. And then she had the picture there, and
Wow.
she was pushing copies, I think. I want to say, but anyway, one way or the other, down the road
See,
here,
they
we
had
will
that
be
after I
showing
left.
that picture.
They had that event last park. Yes,
They
like I said,
what?
contact me on my show. Like I said, it's in my StreamYard. I I could show that picture of Amelia sitting on the stone. I got actually two copies with a little bit different light uh, on there. I've also got the wedding picture of Amelia Patrick when she married John Humphrey, and I've
Now
also got the handwritten
these are
note
all spirits that he's
of
talking
where.
about.
Mhm. I've also got the picture of no, it's a handwritten note of Libby May was buried in Bachelor's Grove at 11 months and 4 days old.
Wow.
And she's not buried at Orland Park because Orland Park was founded by John Humphrey. He was a state senator at the time, the most powerful man in Cook County outside of Chicago. And that was true through all the second half of the 1800s. He actually tried to stop the 80 the 92 91 92 World's Fair that Chicago got because it lost him constituents. But that's another very long story. But
Yeah,
Libby May was a poor, unfortunate soul, and I taught her how to move around. So she is actually a free spirit. She followed me home a couple of times because I figured she was hung there. Baby could figure out, but then I didn't do my "you can't follow me home" thing. I forgot to do it one day. Libby May followed me home and hid a plate in our kitchen that we did not find until we were moving. I looked in the bottom of the cabinet, way in the back, where a child could crawl in there and put the plate where Gail and I would never put it because we'd have to get out on our hands and knees and still bend down to look back there and reach back there. I was cleaning it out and bringing stuff out, and when I brought the plate out, Gail said, that's been missing for forever. She'd washed it. We didn't have a dishwasher. It was in the the hand, the little rack you put over your second sink for the dishes to dry. When I came home from Bachelor's Grove, we heard the dishes shaking a little bit. And she said, "Did you bring anybody home?" And I said, "Oh my God, I forgot to do my normal don't follow me home thing." And a plate was missing. And we didn't find it for several years until 9 years ago when I was packing up to move. There it was, right where a child would have put it.
Wow, that's fantastic. So I want to thank you for a great show. And I want to say that we will follow up again with another one down the road and continue on with Chicago and your experiences and everything you're doing down in Arkansas. It's a pleasure having you here. It's always an
Pleasure
honor
being here.
because you are one of those people that, you're an icon in the city of Chicago as far as I'm concerned when it came to the paranormal community. So it's great to have you, Len. And thank you very much for being
It's great
here,
to
and
be here.
for everybody in the audience there. Thank you for all your comments. I wish we could have answered the rest of them, but we're already past our limit. And sometimes we go a little longer, but those questions would taken us to midnight probably. So
Can I ask? Emerald Isle researcher said you had the cream of the cream picture. Why is it not no more? Google it. Go to the Google machine. Type in ghost picture Bachelor's Grove.
isn't it the
Bang! It
Madonna?
pops up.
Isn't it the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove?
It's called the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove because nobody knew the ID until
Right.
I put a picture of the Madonna next to a picture of Amelia, her wedding picture, and it's the same
Right.
cotton picking dress, the same
Right.
hairstyle, and the profile matches the front shot that I've got of her that I took in the Humphrey house.
So
Dale could not figure it out before because he couldn't get to the Humphrey house. I managed to get in there.
the Humphrey House is a place that Ed Shanahan knows really well too, isn't it?
Yes, it does. He and I have had some disagreements about information I pass out for free. He doesn't like it.
Okay, everybody. Thanks again, Len, and for everybody in the chat. It's been a great show. We thank you for being here and supporting us. And we will see you soon.
All right.
And
If you want to contact me, the best place to do it is Facebook Messenger. Look up Len Dorman.
Len Dorman. It's hard to find. No, he's not.
Yeah, look up Len Dorman. The name of the